have been on standby here at NBC Boston because at any moment right now, President Trump is expected to sign an executive order calling for the dismantling of the Department of Education. But can he? NBC 10's Corey Smith is in studio with us this afternoon with a closer look. Corey?
Well, Colton, closing or ending a federal department requires an act of Congress. So a lot of folks in Washington are wondering what you were saying. Can the president exactly accomplish his hope of dismantling the education department? But we do know this. It is in line with his promises on the campaign trail to reduce the size of government. The Department of Education was created in 1979, and for many years, Republicans have targeted it for dismantling. That even made its way into Project 2025. Now, President Trump has long accused the agency of being wasteful and polluted by progressive ideology. He wants much of the work the department does to go back to the states. And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the department would still manage federal student loans and Pell Grants, as well as the department's enforcement of civil rights. A White House fact sheet says the executive order will direct Secretary Linda McMahon to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states, while continuing to ensure the effective and uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely. Of course, as you might imagine, a lot of folks are not happy with this idea. The top Democrat on the House Committee on Education and the Workforce says getting rid of the Department of Education would disproportionately hurt low-income students and students of color or students with special needs. Back to you guys.
All right, Corey, thank you. That tees us up perfectly to bring in NBC Boston's political commentator, Sue O'Connell. Sue, before we dive into whether or not President Trump can actually do this and pull this off, I open the floor to you, right? Tell us what the Department of Education does, and more importantly, why it was created in the first place.
Well, Colton, the U.S. Department of Education, it was founded back in 1979 by President Jimmy Carter, and its budget just represents 4% of the entire United States federal budget. So why was it formed? What does it do? Well, it distributes federal funding to high-poverty schools and to special education programs, and it manages federal student loans, and it enforces educational civil rights laws. Now, if it's abolished, how would it impact students? Disadvantaged and special education students, they might receive fewer services, and college students relying on federal loans, they could face higher interest rates and fewer protections if the department doesn't offer consumer-friendly loan programs.
Well, let's raise the question, right? Since ending, as you say there, that a federal department, it requires an act of Congress. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the odds, since the Republican-controlled Congress, could they get together to officially end it?
Well, they could, but look, although the department is small, it serves every single school district in America, so every single lawmaker is, I'm sure, already hearing from their constituents if their children are going to be negatively impacted, or if their budget, their city and state budget's going to be negatively impacted. President Trump, he's hoping to get enough congressional support to formally close the department. He's doing that by demonizing teachers' unions to try and get some support. So remember, the margins are super slim for the Republicans in both houses, which they control. So without support from Democrats, Trump is going to have to starve the department to death instead of just chopping its head off. So we'll see what happens.
Sue, it sounds like he quite literally just signed that executive order as you were explaining that. Stay with us. If you were watching us here on NBC Boston, we're going to have much more on this throughout the evening here. With that, Sue, as always, thank you.